recording.
Okay. Everybody ready? Everybody got materials?
Yeah. I think this one that we got over here doesn't have any hooks in it.
Oh yeah, get another one. When I was putting these bags together, I was being aggravated by my wife. She was, yeah, and so I may have forgotten a material or two. So check it. I'll go through the material list right here. What should be in the bag are 4 hooks. These are Sabre 7230 black barbless hooks, like the one I have in my vise right now. It's a size 12. It's a 1X long. I know the original called for 2X long, and I'll explain why we do a 1X long in a little while. You should have some gold tinsel, that's like this right here. Okay? And some lead.
Barbless?
Yes, it's barbless. It's black and it's barbless. You should have some lead wire like this right here. You should have 4 feathers, 2 which are mottled March browns, like the one we have right here, and another 2 which are mottled brown. Because we'll tie a more original color, like this one right here, which is a March brown type fly, and then this one right here, which is all brown type fly. And you say, why are 2 different colors? This was the one that was more original, and it's a color I've used very well, successfully for trout. This color right here has been great for brim. So this is both a great brim fly as well as a great trout fly. And they both work great for trout, and they both work great for brim. It's just that one color works a little bit better for one, the other color works better for the other. That's just my observation. You should have 2 different colors of squirrel zonker. One is dyed brown, that's going to go with the brown feathers. And then one which is a natural, like this. Okay. So red fox squirrel, the reason that Dave Whitlock is called the red fox squirrel is because when Dave Whitlock conceived it, he did it all from just one piece of material, a red fox squirrel that somebody had given him, like that. Okay, but now you can buy, I find these squirrel zonkers to be the bomb. I mean, they're so much easier to work with than cutting pieces of hides off like that. What else? Okay, the body material. On the natural, we're going to be using a squirrel belly. And this is what Dave Whitlock was using, is a squirrel belly on his original right there, with Antron mixed in. Now when Davey Walton started repping for SLF, synthetic living fiber, SLF, which is made by Partridge, Whitlock started mixing SLF instead of Antron. And this is amazing material, the synthetic living fiber. If you look at some of this material right here and just look at it, it's got a lot of sparkle in it. It's just tiny, tiny bits of flashy thread in there that mix really well with squirrel and rabbit and so on. And then should have a brown one like this, that'll go with your brown fly. And a natural, which will go with the squirrel belly right there. And I've got it in a bag for a reason. For some reason, this stuff is the natural SLF squirrel. Just falls apart when you try to put it onto your thread. If you try dubbing this without dubbing wax, you can end up with a bunch of fibers down at the base of your vise. So what we're going to do is, I've got some dubbing wax, and we're going to put the dubbing wax on the thread before we apply this on there. And there's another little trick you can do to keep it. Because after those fish hit it a few times, you suddenly find out that part of your thorax is missing. But there's a trick to keeping that on, keeping it steady. So I think that's it. That's all the materials, and there should be some in every bag. And if not, we've got plenty of bags right there. We've got materials in those. So please shout out, let us know. All right, we're ready to start?
Ready?
Okay. Like I said, I use a Sabre 1X long black barbless hook. What happened was, when I first tied the red fox squirrel pattern, I'd actually taken a class with Dave Whitlock in the early 90s, like in 94, 95, something like that. And he was tying trout flies. And this was one of the patterns he demonstrated. And we tied. And I went out to the Norfolk River near McClellan's. Do y'all know where that is? It's near the trophy trout section down there. And you used to be able to go to McClellan's and just walk in right there and wade. And it was only like about 25 yards or 50 yards to the trophy section. And you'd go out there and you could fish. You could get some big fish. I used to catch a lot of 16 to 20 inch fish in there. But it had a rule, barbless only, single barbless hooks. I was out there fishing one day and I just caught a nice trout. And the game warden came down and he checked my fly. And I had the barb crunched, with the pliers. And so he took a piece of cloth like this and he ran it through the cloth and he was trying to pull it out. And it kind of stuck a little bit. He said, "This does not suffice." He said, "You need to not only punch the barb down, you need to grind it down." And so I said, after that, I'm not going to spend all my time crunching and grinding and all that. I'm going to buy barbless hooks. And back in those days, barbless hooks were probably about 50% more than barbed hooks for some reason.
That was the same guy that figured that.
Yeah.
Same place.
Well,
Yeah, really.
so I started going with barbless hooks. And the only size, and even to this day, the longest size I can find for a barbless nymph hook is 1XL. And it's starting to come out with some 2XL. I just saw this past week, somebody turned me on to one. But then I started tying them on the 1XL long barbless hook. And I found it actually made a better looking fly. If you can see, if you've seen the original, it looks a little elongated. And these look more, these are a little bit shorter. It's still a long fly, but it's got a more natural appearance to it. Yeah, exactly. So that's something that I went to. And of course, the Sabre hooks, these are not only a good bargain, but forget them from Fly Shack, but also the black finish. I've gone to a lot of black finish hooks. That's what the competitors in the fly tying, the World Fly Tying Championships, they're all using black hooks now, black finish hooks on there. But the professionals, they know what they're doing, so. All right. So I'm going to put my thread on there, and I'm using a 70 denier thread. And I know the lead wire goes on here, but I put my thread base on first. Because if you put the wire on, the wire tends to slip up and down the hook shank. It's hard to get that. And you may notice I do a lot of open loops like that. If you run your finger over it like that, then the open loops, you feel it's rough, okay? And that's what you kind of want so that your material doesn't slip over when you try to tie it on. Look at the quality of this video. You can even see the roughness of the threads on there, see? That's amazing. Y'all can thank Bill for that. He did a great job. Okay, so I'm going to put the lead wire on. And I want to put it on halfway between the bar point and the base of the eye of the hook. So about right there, right about where I have it, right there. I'm gonna do like 5 wraps. This is 20 gauge wire. If you're doing 15 gauge wire, I'd say 6 wraps, maybe 7, but this is really all you need. And just pinch it down like that. Come back in. Yeah, this thing will sink pretty good. 5 wraps of 20 gauge wire on there. So you can see where it is. It's halfway between the point and halfway between the base of the iron hook. And then what I'll do is I'll take the thread and I'll wrap over it, forward, back, over it. And what I want to try to do is taper that approach to the lead wire like this. Make a tapered lead off and drop off to the wire. Oh! And this is what happens if you don't pinch that thread down.
Got the thread off.
Yeah. Well, it's not on the bobbin, that was on the wire. I must have tied a dozen of these flies last week and that had never happened once. But it happens when you go to demonstrate.
Dude, you got YouTube on? Huh? You got YouTube? I just thought about it. I was gonna jump before.
Just wrap up the red wire, cover it with the thread.
Oh, I'm missing my threader. I'm just left on the, okay.
You need a thread?
I should be able to do this like this. Let's cut this thread. I hope this is not like the thread I got. I picked up a roll of thread at a fly shop in Tennessee. I went to tie with it and broke every time I used it. I guess it was just a bad oh boy. It's wrapping on me. Yeah, you have a threader? Yeah. Okay. Here you go, Jeff. Thanks. All right. Throw the fly away, right? We'll just wrap right over it. Okay. Remember I said about those nail clippers? That's why you use nail clippers for, right here.
Right. They work reasonable. They're cheaper than $20 scissors.
Yeah. And you can,
Except they don't do too good on GSP.
okay. Now we've wrapped up all that loose part. Okay, so now we want to put a tail in. And so if you take that little piece of natural squirrel zonker that we have right here, it looks like this. And we're just going to take a little bit of that off, cut maybe about 1/8 of an inch off. if you ever seen the original, oh, okay.
Yeah, you cut it off or you pull it off?
No, I cut it off.
Okay,
Yeah, don't pull it off, because you might end up
okay, thanks.
getting uneven tips. Okay, so you see, it's not much. Just a tiny amount. We can always add on, but if you cut too much, then you're wasting material. And besides, it doesn't anchor very well if you cut too much off. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do a couple of wraps like that, and then check the length of that tail. And the tail, if you can see the screen up there, you're going to tie it back to where a barb would be for the body. But the tail should not extend past the end of the hook more than half the length of the hook. Does that make sense? Okay. So come back to where this barb would be if there was a barb on this hook. And you can see right there. And it's like I said, it's a really sparse amount of material. I tend to add a little more than what the original called for. This is about what the original has in it. But overall, it's a pretty sparse fly. We're all there? Okay. Don't worry too much about those fibers sticking out right now. Like I said, we can come back and... Okay, we're going to take our gold oval tinsel like this. And this stuff is the greatest. I've quit using copper wire. And instead, I'm using this now, even for my hare's ears. I mean, you know, unless you're tying something like a copper john, still use wire. But this stuff is really much better. It flashes better, and it doesn't add so much bulk to your fly, to the body of the fly.
How long a piece?
Actually, what I do is I take the whole strip, but actually you're not going to use any more than maybe 2 inches of it. And so I anchor it in right behind the lead wire, so build up that body too much, and I wrap back.
So it sticks out behind the fly?
Yeah. If you've got a material clip, or one of these little clips, one of these things, by the way, Mike,
Hair clips?
hair clips.
With
See, I never used hair clips, so I wouldn't know.
You go in, you buy hair clips and fingernail polish and then good to go.
Do I look like Dylan Mulvaney?
Bud Light candy.
Yeah, Bud Light. Okay.
Sorry, no shot.
All right. The abdomen is going to be on this version. The abdomen is going to be this squirrel belly. You want to call it yellow? It's called squirrel belly if you order it from a fly shop. But it's kind of a gold with synthetic living fiber mixed in there too. So I promised I was going to tell 3 stories about Dave Whitlock. So let me start one now. First of all, I fished with a lot of famous fly fishermen. And, I'm known personally over the years. People like Chris Helms, Gary Borger, Jason Borger, Tim Borski, and so on. But I never was really close to Dave Whitlock, not like Tom Bullock is. Y'all know Tom Bullock from Shreveport. Yeah, he's fished with Dave. But I have had a number of incidents with experiences with Dave Whitlock. And the first one was the first time I met Dave Whitlock. It was not at a fly show. It was an outdoor show in Texas. And so there was fishing, there was general fishing, conventional fishing, hunting, and Dave was probably the only fly fisherman there. They had a huge bass tank. You've seen these bass tanks that they bring to shows, and the guys will get up there at the top and they'll demonstrate, techniques with the bass sitting in the tank. And so that was a really popular bass fisherman from Oklahoma back then. No, it wasn't Jimmy Houston, somebody else, but he was like the top of the circuit. I mean, he was winning, tournaments and all that, finishing at the top of the Bassmasters Classic. He gets up there and he was demonstrating plastics, fishing plastics. So he gets up there and he's throwing this, and he's doing it for 45 minutes, and he's talking about retrieving certain plastics. And all during that time, not one bass hit the plastic. They came up, they looked at it, they nibbled on it, whatever, but he never caught one. So after he was finished, he tried to tease one to bite. Couldn't get him to bite, and there's Dave waiting to get up there. Dave gets up there, and then Dave demonstrates fishing hair bugs, his Whitlock's diver, and different ways you can fish it. And so he shows, fishing on top, fishing, pulling it down. And he says, if you really want to, if the fish are deep and they're hard to catch, what I do is I add a sink tip connector between the fly line and the leader. And so he did that, and then he threw it out there and he let it sink. And that sink tip connector went down, 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 and pulled the bug down like this. And then when he stripped it, the diver went down like this and then started rising back up again. And when that happened, 2 bass jumped on it. I mean, they fought for it. And one of them got it, and he's fighting a bass. He did that 4 more times and caught 4 more bass in order. And everybody's just kind of looking at him. And don't think I didn't take notice of that, because that's a technique I use even to this day. In fact, I did it one year. I finished second. I've fished the World Championship Bass on the Fly 3 times, and I've won it 3 times. And I finished second once and 4th another time. And the time that I finished second, I was having a tough day and nothing was happening. I was fishing off a point, and I did that same technique. And those bass, I could see them on my little fish finder. They just weren't biting or anything. And I used that technique, a Dave's hair bug on a sink tip connector. And those bass hit it. And I caught 3 bass. They weren't big, but it's all I needed to finish second. It was a really tough day for everybody. So keep that in mind, those little techniques like that. Dave Whitlock did so many of those things. He wasn't just a lot of big famous fly fishermen have not only, the reason they're legends like Flip Pallett and Lefty Cray and others is because they have not only, within the industry, and they've caught fish. They've gone out there and fished. I mean, Flip Pallett was one of the best guides in South Florida, according to my buddy Bob LeMay. He said he could go where somebody hadn't caught fish for a week, and he could go there and catch a fish. So that's the reason they're the legends. And Dave Whitlock was like that. Dave Whitlock could go any place and catch a fish. So, y'all want to go ahead and put the dubbing on? Now this dubbing, for some reason, the Squirrel SLF, and I did a Google on this the other day, just to check while I was tying some of these flies. Some of the material like this dubs really well, like this one right here. And others, like this one right here, is material from hell. It just doesn't dub well. And it's the same stuff. I mean, it's just, I guess the dyeing of the material allows it to be dubbed better. But I'm going to go ahead and, if you want to do this also, go ahead and dubbing. And I've been dubbed the world's worst dubber by the Royal Dublin Dubbing Society of Dublin. But my problem is that I dub too much. So if you're gonna dub, add just a little bit at a time.
What length?
Do about 2 inches. You know, the thing about dubbing is don't do too long thread amount. You can always add on. Taking off is a bear. We'll go ahead and wrap this. And what I'm going to do is wrap it up to where the wire is. Okay? So you see the wire is still all exposed, and there's the abdomen.
So you're gonna rub it, roll it over the wire.
Don't roll it over the wire. Roll it right up to the wire. In fact, you can cover maybe a little bit of the wire at the end, but don't wrap it over the wire.
Had too much, and it's just balls, so I backed it off, so it's all it off.
Okay? When you've done that, go ahead and wrap your wire.
You don't have to count it, just regular.
Well, you know, the way I do it is,
String is fucking, your line's fucking up. We leave the places? Tie that off right there.
I usually do about 3 wraps, and then I place it over the wire, the lead wire, and then I tie off a couple wraps like that. So I usually have about 3 wraps. It doesn't show as well in the video up there. Again, if I was wearing a different shirt, I think it would. Let's see, can you see it better?
Get it over the wire.
Yeah, right over the wire, right over the wire, and that's when I wrap.
You go behind, kind of.
But you don't get the tinsel over the wire, other than the tie.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Cut the braid or gold braid.
See if I can get- Okay, now you can see it better. I don't know why, that angle.
Yeah, the gold is pretty close to the
Mm-hmm. When you're gonna look at this on YouTube later, at home, or whatever, it's gonna look a lot better than it does on that screen. That's why we're talking about how excited we are that we're gonna have a TV screen up there. But I can look at the video right here on the camera and I can see it really good. It comes out a lot, the distinction of colors comes out much better on video, on TV than it does on projector.
I can see it, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it looks, you can tell.
Okay, now comes the good part.
Tough.
We want to dub this stuff right here. This is the natural, and this is what I was telling you about. The fibers will just fall on you. So, in order to do that, I'm going to take some dubbing wax, and I'm going to
I'm also involved back.
I never found it side by side.
just apply it to this thread, like that. Just rub it up. Who needs some dubbing wax? Anybody need dubbing wax?
No good bark.
Anybody need some? We got some right here, so.
This is a shorter, noodle.
Yeah, it's gonna be a shorter noodle. But, I don't want you to make it too short because I'm gonna do something right here. I'm gonna show you a little trick with this stuff. When you apply the material, just kind of stick it on to that wax. Just stick a little bit and just stick it to the thread. And you see it doesn't fall off.
We good, good. Hey, what's the deal with the beeswax? Or the violin?
Okay. Now this stuff right here, even if I've got it stuck with the wax, it's not going to stick very well. Because the first few times the fish hits it, it's going to start coming off the body. So, if you have a dubbing loop, dubbing tool, in this case my favorite dubbing tool is an electrical connector, like this. What I do is, I put that connector down like that, and we'll make a dubbing loop. See, right there on the thread, I just clip it. I take my thread and I wrap it around the top up here. And I follow through on the other side, under and over, like that. Bring my thread up to where my eye is. I see I have a dubbing loop right here. Okay? What can you do with a dubbing loop? You spin that dubbing loop, and I'm going to just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. Exactly, it makes a rope out of it, but it holds those fibers in, and they can withstand a lot of punishment.
The first time we did that was that was simple, that bill tied. I've seen like 4 or 5 videos doing this technique since,
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I have myself a rope, and that material is going to hold in there really good. Okay, and now I'm going to wrap that over that lead wire. And after I've made like a couple of wraps, I'm just going to keep going over some of that till it builds up. Then I'll move it forward a little bit. And I just keep building it up on top of each other. If you ever notice this fly, if you look at the videos demonstrating this fly, you'll see that this upper thorax, or this thorax,
I couldn't make it to the meeting, but I wanted to.
is like it's pretty bulky. I'm going to tie it off by going back to the thread. And now you see what it looks like? Isn't that buggy?
For these, that's one of the checks.
Discount.
And then the checks for that amount, $13.50. There was one that was made out to me, and I think I endorsed it. Let me make sure.
Okay, now, let's go. So, second story about Dave Whitlock.
The one that was made out to me, and I endorsed.
At 1 year at Southern Conclave, that's at Fly Fishers International Southern Council, does a big show in Mountain Home, Arkansas every year. I did a presentation on Friday morning at 9 o'clock on kayak fishing in Louisiana marsh. And Dave Whitlock was following me with a presentation about fly fishing for trout in North Arkansas. And they had a problem with the projector. And so I said, no problem, I've got my own projector. So I went to the vehicle, got the projector, set it up, all that, and did my presentation. Right before the end of my presentation, Dave and Emily walked in and heard the end of mine. And I told them what happened, that the projector was, they had run to get another projector, but y'all could use mine. And she said, well, thank you. So I sat in for most of that presentation, but then I had to go. So I told Emily before I left, I said, just leave it here. So anyway, I come back later and I got my projector. They'd set up their own projector. They got it fixed. I pulled out my projector and everything, put it away. And then I got a phone call from Emily Whitlock about 3 days later. And she said that, those little laser pointers you can get at Walmart, whatever? Well, I had one in the bag with the projector and all, and they were using it. She said, I picked up your laser pointer by accident. I'm going to return it to you. I said, Emily, don't worry about it. It's like, what is it, $5 at Walmart? At the little... She said, no, I'll send it to you. So a week later, I get my little lighter pointer. And with it, I got a cup, one of those Dave's mugs with the bluegill rising, and a deck of these greeting cards, and a personal note from Dave saying, thank you for... I'm telling you, that's the kind of person he was right there. All for just a little $5. They went to all that trouble. But, I talked to him many times. When he came to the Contraband Fly Fishers Conclave many years ago and spent the day and did a program and all that. And then, of course, he did the Master Series one year. He was always most gracious and just a great person to talk to. And I went to the banquet that night and sat next to him and Emily at the banquet. And I'm going to tell you, he was married before. He was married to Joanne Whitlock. Yeah. And she was kind of like this little, she was very quiet. And then something happened. I won't go into details, but they kind of, they weren't getting along, so they divorced and all that. And then he met Emily, and she was a biologist for Arkansas Fish and Game. And she's got the type of personality that Dave needed in his life, because he was like a whole new man. And I've had many people tell me that, she was like an organizer. She was like his best friend, and they fished together and everything else like that. A true soulmate. So I think, Dave was lucky to find somebody like him, because he needed that in his life. And you could see it, too, in the way he was, in his latter years, how he became more active again, especially with the fly fishing community and all that. So we're ready for a collar, right? So in this particular one, we're going to use a Brahma feather. Now, the original called for a partridge feather. What happened during the pandemic was there was a shortage of partridge. And I called up Fly Fish Food and talked to Clark Pierce. Y'all know Clark Pierce at Fly Time with Uncle Cheech? He's on Facebook. Anyway, he said, we're using Brahma feathers, Brahma hen feathers. He said, I think you find them a better substitute for the partridge. And he was right. This material right here has incredible movement in the water. I pool test all my flies, and so after tying the first few flies I did, wet flies I did with Brahman, went out there and cast them in the pool and looked at the fibers just, they did this. They really had a lot of movement on there. Now, Bill pointed out that, and rightly so, that these Brahma feathers, the stem on them is weaker than a partridge. So you kind of have to be careful when you're hackling with this palmering with feather right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this feather and I'm going to clear a stem off by just removing this material down here. And you can see that stem is really thin right there. But I want to use, and boy, this is not like a wet fly. It's going to have a shorter wrap around, I don't know what you call it, legs coming off of it. So I'm actually going to take the very tip of this and use that. So even this feather right here, which would be used on most wet flies, I'm going to go ahead and pull those off.
So how much do you pull off?
You're going to leave about 1/4 of an inch of material.
From the very end coming back?
Yeah, like that.
So most of it.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is, you see the very end like that? I'm going to take that very end and I'm just going to clip and make a little triangle. And make a little triangle head like that on there. See that?
That's the very tip of the.
This, unlike a partridge feather, you don't want to strip that end because you'll have something too weak to tie into. So I leave that little piece and I just trim it.
So how do you, the very tip of the feather is between your fingers?
Yes.
And how do you get that little thing on the end of it?
Pull it back like that and you cut.
All this is what I got right there.
Yeah, am I going wrong?
That's what you wanted to.
This is
Try
here,
to-
here.
Okay.
I'm not getting that little,
We got all the very.
So when you tie it in, you tie it in, so the color side is facing you or away from you?
Yeah, okay. So, good question. You see the feather's it's kind of got a concave shape like that to it. You want the concave face facing down. See, there's a lighter color on the inside of the concave and a darker color on the outside of the concave. We want that darker color on top. So you can look at it as the concave below and darker on top. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tie it in now. Okay? Tying that tip.
which way?
Now what I'll do is I'll take my fingers and take a little saliva and just kind of pull back, I should have done it before, but pull back some of those fibers off that dubbing that we just put in there so it doesn't get trapped underneath the feathers. Just wrap them. Now, if you've got your this thing right here, your hackle tool, I highly recommend that. This is probably the most valuable tool right there if you're going to be working with feathers.
What was that tool?
The hackle pliers. Because if I try to pull this like it is, it's going to break that feather.
It's gonna be one of a kind. Inside the little triangle. Then you go back a little further. Well, you know, it's really red. On everything.
Using a red head, you're tying a red head on the front?
Well, the picture showed a red head, and so I just use pink instead of red, and that, for all of my hot spots.
Yeah.
Orange for that God's choice hairs here, but everything else pretty much that hot pink.
Yeah, it seemed to they seem to trigger on that. There's something about a red or
What's that like on that red? My Egan's got that pink. Since Bill got me tying red darts, I tried that even on moth flies. I put pink in red.
there's something about pink or red that just a little spot of it just really triggers. Like on my SR-71 woolly boogers, I put that little red head on there. That makes a difference.
That's a good thing right there.
So, I wanna like.
Okay.
Or you wanna turn them aside?
How we doing, Bill?
We're good.
Everybody's got it? Okay. Okay, so take your hackle pliers and slowly, and here's a little trick right here, is just take these feathers and stroke them back before you start. And that'll give you some, oh, then go ahead and slowly wrap forward.
Right.
Each time that you turn, yeah. Each time you come through, pull these feathers back.
What's that? You want my cheaters?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just gonna have to call it a day and say catch fish.
Then when you finish, take your thread and go underneath that stem a couple of times, and there you have it. I'm gonna hold it like that. I'm gonna keep that piece of stem on like that. This is one of those flies that George Harvey used to say, you know, if you want to be good at it, tie about 1-200 of these flies. 100, 200 of these flies and you'll be good.
You have it down pat by then.
Yeah.
Had to kill 2 more chickens. You had to kill 2 more what? 2 more chickens. Oh, yeah. You had a bunch of barred rocks. Oh, yeah. I got plenty of stripes. And 1 rooster, when I'll get the head,
Get another one.
Some people like to use.
Yeah. Just kind of sit on his lap while drinking coffee.
Okay,
Right.
And then that's it?
wait, now we're going to, you can go ahead and clip that stem. I want to show you that I use, this is where I use nail clippers for. I pick the thread up like this, and then I just isolate the
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
the stem, and this way I don't risk cutting the thread. It's hard to, it's hard to fathom how angry I can get when I've done a whole fly,
It'll catch
and then I
maybe.
cut the thread, just trying to cut the,
You buy nail clippers when you buy hard as nails, hair clips.
That's it.
okay,
You go to the top of those, you're always afraid to go.
and then just finish your head off.
Right.
Oh, shoot, there we go. I broke my thread.
Again?
On the head, yeah.
I got a roll that got 2 ends in the middle. I mean, I started using it, it had another end coming out.
Yeah, same here. I kind of short. My tail's like a fish ate a bunch of it already. That's what I'm gonna get. The fish just ate right off of it. Next thing you say,
Okay. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Now what I'll do is, after I've got this fly finished, I'll come back, and I don't have a brush with me tonight, but I'll take a little brush and I'll just brush those fibers on the feather fibers and body fibers. And it's hard to believe this fly could get any bushier, but it does. And it looks really good. Okay, I'm going to show y'all something with head cement. Some people apply head cement directly out of a bottle like that, but if you do, you might get a block of
Then you forget to clean
Fluid.
the eye out when you eat it, you got to
and then you get a block of fluid on there. So I just take a piece of tin foil like this and put the head cement on the foil. Then I'll take my dubbing needle and just put it like this, and then I can apply it like that.
No, that's too dry.
But the backs.
It's a nice size deer.
That's like Justin said, he said that backyard this morning, y'all are completely straight. He has to run it out of his garden. That's what our place got. We know, not, we don't see, we don't know. He got nothing with the that's it in his yard. No, back then I got one run through the backyard. My grandson, he's not doing this actually, all day, I told him that's my photography firm.
There you go.
So, if you take the end of that stem like that, you can use it to clear out the glue in your hook. Okay, third Whitlock story. This is not a direct story, kind of a secondhand story. But, I grew up a fan, like maybe some of you, Three Dog Night. How many remember Three Dog Night? Yeah. So I went to a concert for Three Dog Night, and Corey Wells, the history of Three Dog Night was three singers, studio singers, Chuck Negron, Corey Wells, and Danny Hutton, that formed that band. And basically, the singers just got some band members together, and that's how the band was formed. Corey Wells was a big fly fisherman. He passed away several years ago, but he was even on Fly Fishing the World a couple of times. And so they came here for concert, and I tied up a whole bunch of trout flies like that. And I used to be a much better tyer than I am now. I don't know, my skills have degraded. But I tied up the most beautiful set of trout flies in a little box, put them in a little box. And I went to the show, and beforehand, I contacted the manager of Three Dog Night and told him I had a gift for Corey Wells. And so he let me meet him backstage. And so I gave him a box of trout flies, and he was really gracious about it. He was excited about it. He was a great guy to talk to. He told me a story about Dave Whitlock. Dave had come to one of their concerts, and they were going to go out fishing the next day, he and Dave Whitlock. So he met Dave at the river that morning, and he says, "Hey, Dave," he says, "so let's go. I got the spot. We're going to catch some trout and all this other stuff." And Dave's like kind of smiling like that. And he looked at him and says, "Did you hear what I said, Dave?" Oh, yeah. So they get out to the river, and Corey says he was pointing to a spot where the trout were rising and all that. And he says, "Dave, come over here." Dave's looking at him, got a smile on his face. "Dave, come here." He says, "Look over here." He says, oh, he comes over. So this went on for a little while, and Corey thought that Dave Whitlock was semi-deaf or something like that. So he came up behind him like this, and then he noticed something in his ear. And he said, he pointed to Dave and says, "What's in your ear?" It turned out it was the butt of a cigarette. He had them in both ears. He had gone to the concert the night before, and the music was too loud. So he bummed 2 cigarettes, and he cut the butts off, and he stuffed the butts of the cigarettes into his ears. And he still had them the next morning when he showed up to fish. So yeah, that was.